Yeah, we have started. So next operational meeting, we can start. And didn't you see Sergio?
No, he didn't say anything. He was not online.
Okay, because I tried once to reach him. Okay, then we could start. At first, let's recap with the agenda. So I will now drop the link to the chat. It's a rationale about the new working group of Research Data Alliance. And this is now I would explain why I was so attentive about this link, because it's the working group about the sensitive data and the trusted environments to treat the sensitive data. Well, I have literally a lot of experience with, let's say, not so sensitive, but also the classified data, as my diploma was partially classified when I was a student. And what I would say, and this is why I am against the decisions to use an open science infrastructure for the classified and sensitive data. Once you are declaring some data as classified or sensitive or somehow restricted, then anyone which could participate by his own will or not in the treatment of the data is becoming responsible. And this is impossible to avoid. This comes from experience, and this comes also from let's say, the actual practice. And also there is I wrote about it, the post on LinkedIn. So if some data are declared classified, then the knowledge about the existence of the data would be also declared classified, despite if we want it or not. So to be honest, I see that the declaration of the working group about the sensitive data in the Research Data Alliance is also, let's say, closing a debt between the governance over the data and the openness of the science. So what in our context is this is why any kind of a decentralized technologies are considered vulnerable at first, and the second as a menace. So they are considered dangerous. I didn't find the link, I'm very sorry, but there was a draft for the informational doctrine of the United States. Probably Eric once posted it. And it was said in that document that USA is for treatment of the open data only in the centralized infrastructures. So if you would find the link, just drop it in the chat or in the agenda document. It would be really helpful. But this is the reasoning why from one side, the decentralized technologies are considered dangerous for the data treatment from the governmental point of view. And the second is, let's say, why the data treatment infrastructure, as it is declared open, they should stay open. The first one is, let's say, it could be considered as a fact. The second one is, let's say, the point of view. So at first, I wanted to ask you about your experience, and then we would discuss if we are able to write a reply on that working group. So what would you say?
I think I had two two thoughts or two I guess areas of thought that we can go into that could help on one hand, and maybe also give us a proper direction to tackle it, maybe in the reply. So one thing is obviously which is in the blockchain research quite big now, is zero knowledge proofs. Obviously, that's the most new and most interesting solution for any type of sensitive data, be it personal data or anything else. So that is, I think, I don't know if it is something that we can obviously tackle, because the research is not even that far now in practice. But that is at least one, I think, one interesting like cryptographic or technological solution that could I guess provide more openness in like a concept, because then you can still share, let's say, all the data that you want without having to disclose the data. People just know what is in the data. Again, you just have to have a proof of something and not share the data itself. So that would be one technological idea. But the second one that you also mentioned is to even, I think, start with the question of what is then open science. If we can't have data that is open, then maybe we need a different approach. Then we can't call it open science. Then we can call it data availability science. And the availability is something that can move based on sensitive data or not sensitive data. I think that's a very, for me, it's a very interesting question, because anytime anybody talks about open science and open data, it never discusses the sensitive data part that you mentioned as well, because people just assume, okay, then if you have open science, it means your data is open. But in the back of the head, everybody still says, oh, sensitive data is not part of open science. But then the question is, how do we approach it as a philosophical question? Because what if you have medical research, and medical research can't get access to, let's say, sensitive data, which they would need for their research? Then what do we do? I don't know. For me, it's a very interesting and broad question that almost nobody of the open science space really tries to get into, because it's so complex, I think.
Yeah, Francis, do you have any experience with this?
Well, yeah, I've worked a lot with the GDPR, of course, and I've worked a lot in biomedical research. So I've seen how incredibly difficult it is. For example, the European Medicines Agency had a policy called 0070, I think it was, where they wanted, after medicine was approved, that they would make the dossier of the data publicly available. However, that required redaction, and the redaction would take years, and eventually you have data that's so impoverished that you can't use it. So they actually abandoned that. They used Brexit as the excuse to abandon it, but they abandoned it and they never went back. I think this is a major, major concern about what open science is. I think it goes to the very heart of what open science is. The more you redact your data, the more you limit access to certain parts of your data, certain areas of your data, the more you impoverish it, and the less you can use it. And the value of data is in its utility, period, nothing else. So, and yeah, this is kind of, well, it's something. It's not something that nobody talks about, but yeah, how to do it. I looked very briefly. Wasn't aware of this, but I looked very briefly, Andre, at their proposals, their statement or something, whatever they call it there. I actually thought it was really well written and really well. I mean, I just looked now as we were speaking, so it looks really, really well done. And you have to keep in mind that most researchers, in RDA or anywhere else, they do think that the government does no wrong and will do no wrong, and that we should support the government, whatever the government wants. So, and of course, I'm of the precisely of that mindset. Like, you couldn't move me an inch from that. And so if the government says, well, this data is sensitive, now, of course the data is sensitive. Who would think it wouldn't be sensitive? So I think that we have to be mindful of all this politics that's in the background of these things. But I think that this looks like an interesting working group. It really does. It really does. We don't have to agree with them, you know. We don't have to agree with people about what their politics are, what they think is important, what they don't think is important. I don't care about that too much. I really care more. The only thing I really care about in life is the conversation itself. So it's more about taking care of the conversation than it is about achieving one or another outcome. If it was about achieving outcomes, I would have committed suicide more times in a day than I could,
Oh,
you could
yeah,
imagine.
yeah.
Yeah. So,
And yeah, but I have raised this. I have raised this just to illustrate. That's not a principle. It's like, let's say, just sightseeing of, let's say, the distribution of the responsibility, which we should always keep in mind while we are doing even the identification of data. Because once we have, for example, the distributed schema of the identification of some data, these data are declared, for example, classified, then we should be aware of the one simple question: should we disclose using our identification schema that these data are literally classified or not? Because if we do, someone from the authorities can ask, why would you think that you may have a right to disclose this? Or why do you think that anyone could, yes, Sergio, that anyone could stay aware that these data are declared classified? Why should anyone know about this? Sergio?
Yeah, the thing is, what's the scope of a persistent identifier? I mean,
Yeah.
what's the tool for? For example, let's take another persistent identifier like ISSN.
Yeah.
ISSN, it gives a persistent identification of serial publications. It does not judge them. It's not how do you say? If a journal is a predatory journal,
Yeah.
it could easily have ISSN, and ISSN as an organization, they are not responsible for the predatory behavior of the journal, because it's just a persistent identifier. We should also, there are many things to solve in the scholarly communication, but not everything is answered with a persistent identifier.
Yeah.
Some things can be solved with the persistent identifiers: the findability, the accessibility, to put the traceability, and to be referred, like we were saying last meeting. If an artificial intelligence is using my paper and it has a persistent identifier, then I can push the AI to cite my paper as a source, because it will have always a persistent reference to the source of the production.
Yeah.
But
so yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, and also in this north-south relation, to give an accessible tool for the I don't like the global south, but those who cannot afford TOI, to have a persistent identifier that can, without losing sovereignty, identifier their production.
Yes, you are perfectly right. It's also about the sovereignty of the data, and also about the metadata. So yeah, probably after this, I have nothing to say more about this problem, because the answer sounds like for me the answer sounds like we should yield the sovereignty of the data, but we should allow any user to decide about the sovereignty over the metadata, right? Okay, this is perfectly fine to me. Please, if anyone have something more to add here. Okay, seems nothing. So we can close this point of our agenda for today. And just a last question about it. Would you like to prepare the reply for the RDA, the short reply, 2 paragraphs? Are we interested in it, or we may just drop it back?
Well, Sergio was going to say something. Sorry.
Yeah, just
It's okay, go ahead.
yeah. Would we like to prepare the reply on the RDA website, on the community review of the working group?
Yeah, I'm just seeing it now because of you, but I also see that the RDA working group, the Artificial Intelligence and Data Visitation Working Group, is mentioned there.
Yeah.
And I happen to co-chair. I founded that working group. So we're just finishing our deliverables. So I will respond to this if you do not object on my own. But
Please.
I would also appreciate, and I will do it very quickly because I don't have time for this, but I would also be willing to join a response from this group, or if 1 or 2 people wanted to respond themselves on behalf of the group, however you want to do it, I'm all in. So that's good. I think I can respond because I can respond on the basis of the deliverables that we have from the AIDV working group. So but this is a bit of a, but I find this working group, it seems well structured. They have really thought about this. They have really prepared this.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be learned from these people. And, you know, what we're talking about every week here when we meet is this kind of limitations of freedom. It's basically what it's in the digital space here, but it's the same thing as in the, Sergio has just kicked X out of his country because, yeah, for whatever reason, I don't know why he kicked him out of the country, but he kicked him out. So we have this discussion and this idea of sovereignty. How far does it go? There will always be government, and there will always be the imposition of restrictions by government. So it's a bit about it. So you want to understand what the government's doing and how they're doing it. If you want to,
and this is a problem, I would say.
Yeah, but this is the world has never been different. It won't be different tomorrow either.
Yeah. But if we consider that most of the planet have a democracy, that government, it represents the people of the country. It's not word for every country, but most of the countries have democracy. Because if you're not governments, there is corporations.
Well, that's the major problem today is there's little distinction between the two. That's today's problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I have to choose, I'd rather choose governments over corporations because somehow people have a saying on who's in charge of government.
But I think, yeah, I would
If
maybe
you have to
add.
choose, because there is no other type of organization in the digital world, either governments or supra-government representations like a UN, but it has a very biased agenda in the asymmetry of the representation. Or you have corporations. And if we look at governments, most of the countries have a democratic way of allowing people to participate and have a say. And if not, they, in the last case, they have the territory, the street to go for and try to have a change. But in corporations, you have no say at all.
Yeah, maybe I would try to frame it in a different way and not talk about government and corporations, but have the concepts of openness and closedness and centralization and decentralization. I think for our thinking is also better to not really go to the corporation and the government question, because if we reply, for example, to this working group, then we could use it as an exercise to formulate our, I guess, philosophy or concept, which would then maybe talk about these potential limitations that we see of too much openness or too much decentralization. What does it mean if you then talk about research data?
Well, about this, I have an argument about if we have an open data, which have a convenient, for example, licensing or so on, so the policy, the only thing let's say, the issuer of this data should track is if this policy is violated or not. If it is needed. In most cases, it is not even needed. I completely agree that it would be needed in terms of medically sensitive data. Yeah, but here the aspect of sovereignty comes with another aspect, which is, let's say, gathering the responsibility due to violation. Because, for example, if we are disclosing using some infrastructure the medically sensitive data, and afterwards the government says, okay, these data are sensitive, so to avoid the violations of the policies, we should control the infrastructure, like it is written in the informational doctrine of the USA. Even if there is a democracy in the country, then this process is the infrastructure holder will be unable to stop. And this is what really can be a threat for the decentralized systems. For the decentralized systems. And the thing is, for now, should we consider ourselves considering this kind of data? Because to be honest, I think no. Should we deal with that data, this kind of data, until the establishment of something?
You know, it's impossible to say that this box of data is personal or sensitive data, and this box of data is not personal, not sensitive, because it all depends upon how you use those two boxes.
Yeah.
So it's not that the data object, let's say, itself is sensitive or personal or not. It's has much more to do with the use and what you can construct based on the data that you have. So people talk about data as though that's personal. Okay, your telephone number, that's personal data. But if you have a number and you don't know it's a telephone number and you can't connect it to a telephone and you can't connect it to a person, then it's not personal data. So that data object itself is not the problem. It's the relationships it has and the uses that it's put to, I think.
Okay, then I think the only thing we could do is to explicitly declare this. So we are not aware of the let's say of the sovereignty of the data.
So the other thing is, like what the GDPR does is it puts into place a kind of governance structure for personal data. So what it does is it doesn't mark off data really, it marks off responsibilities. If what we're doing is looking at decentralized identifiers, PIDs, then we don't have to go into and I think Sergio was saying this a bit too, and maybe Venture, we don't have to go into the question of, does this PID represent personal data or not? If it represents the title of a book, is it personal data? I suppose. If it represents an author, is it personal data? I don't know. Is that our problem?
No.
Does it have to be our problem?
I think no, it's not our problem. But we should, I think we should explicitly declare this.
But then the question will be but the question we'll have to deal with is how can we how can we use DPIDs across open and closed data systems? How can they facilitate that kind of communication? Because we want to facilitate communication. And the other question can be, how can we use DPIDs to maybe protect sensitive data as well?
Yeah, this it's a good point. It's a good point. But I guess in the decentralized infrastructure, it is not. Let's say we are as the issuer of the first list of identifiers should not be aware about this, because the decentralization concept leads that the person or the organization who held the sovereignty over the data should be also responsible about the sensitivity or accessibility of this data. So they should decide what to disclose, as Sergio said. And but the thing is, it's just my opinion, but it's a strong opinion, because let's say you know, I am from the country not fulfilled with freedom, and let's say we should avoid the situation when someone would ask us, do you know that this PID invented by you is used to disclose the sensitive data? Why didn't you do anything to prevent this? Because we are asking you to do. And the case is, and we know the case, which is now, actually it's coming with the events which are held in Paris. This is what we should declare, I think. Thank you.
The difference is like the DPID will, opposite to a Telegram, where you have point-to-point communication without exposing to the world. The decentralized persistent identifier, what we will do, it will maintain a traceability with the content, and the person that is issuing that content is the person responsible for the content. You are not giving any obscure or secret point-to-point communication by giving the centralized persistent identifier. We should go back, because I feel we are like in a platform mainframe that is so stick to us and we should go back to the first internet concept, to the founders of internet concept, and think on a tool for that spirit of connecting science and connecting people producing science, and forget platform or regulations, because it's a mainframe that is put to us and it's not allowing to think freely. We are really thinking restrictions and regulations before thinking sharing and openness.
Yes. So yeah, please.
So we can declare that the tool, what the tool is for, what's the objective of the tool, the principle of declaration about the tool, and clearly state that we are not responsible for the content. Sure, I will be an example very gross. Yeah. It could be used to share a photograph of a sensitive content, let's say like this. And we are not responsible for that content.
Yeah.
Maybe. I would add
please.
as a thought, because we talked about it before, and I think that helps with this question as well, is if we focus on the metadata as like the goal, because again, if we think about the openness in science and what is needed at this point, it's not necessarily that we have the data available that we see what happened, but that at least there is some kind of, again, the proof of data, which would be the metadata, that some researcher did something. If that is once immutably stored, then we're already further ahead than with traditional science, where people can create data and then they lose data. So if we just even put the metadata as an immutable artifact, then we're already further ahead when it comes to trust, because we know that sometime this data existed. Even if it's gone, whatever the user did with it, at least we know it existed before. It had certain characteristics which are in the metadata, so we know how to deal with that. And that could help with the sovereignty as well. Like we said before, is that we disconnect data from metadata. I think we're taking away a lot of limitations for us as well, because then the data always stays with the producer. We only want to have this availability of something has been created as a research object, which is then stored in the metadata, and the rest just moves on.
So in terms of particle accelerators, the principal investigator should be the only who is thinking about how to disclose the actual data. Okay, in this case, I completely agree. So please, Francis.
Yeah, just thinking, what we're concerned with is the integrity of the data or the data object, not the integrity of the user. Is that correct?
Yes, it's
I know
absolutely correct.
It's going to be very difficult to maintain that distinction, because
and the metadata, not the data, the data object.
Yeah, the metadata.
Metadata, yeah.
Metadata first.
Yep. That's good.
Because the object, the digital object could be lost, but you will in the persistent identifier you will maintain the metadata, and the ideal system is by, like we said in the document. Let me see how we phrased it before. To ensure long-term sustainability through redundancy. It means that every part contains the whole.
Yeah.
And that can be done only with metadata. You cannot do that with data. It can be like a holograph concept on persistent identifier. You know, the hologram, a part contains the whole. That's why you can make a hologram.
Yeah. It's a good point. It's a good point here. Okay, so probably we have agreed on this and we can close this point, right? Okay, let's start with the next point in our agenda, and this is
But just to close this point, somebody will send a response to this consultation on the RDA working group.
if I would have a time, yes. I suppose to do.
I actually liked the way you started the conversation, Andre, just to say that.
Sorry?
I liked the way you started the conversation on the RDA working group. And I also like what Benche said. We don't have to go into the politics. We can stay with a scientific discussion. We can focus on the need for openness, for sharing, for communication, for efficiency.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I need just 1 minute. Yeah, I'm very sorry. So we have returned. Yeah. So the next point probably it would be relatively short. It's about the I area, the extended article.
Okay.
The extended article. So what would you wasn't you aware about the Data Systems 2024 Congress? The article we had reported on this April.
Quando ti capita fai l'ordine per due, penso.
I will drop now the link to the chat because it's the last version.
Anch'io ce l'ho. No, utilizzo, questo è per quando sei fuori. Anch'io ce l'ho un attimo.
Can't you see it? Okay, so we were invited by Petre Dini, who is the chairman of this organization, to prepare an extended version. I prepared a small proposal about what we should say about. It's just why we shouldn't think about the PID infrastructure like a legal business project. And this is actually what Decile Labs in their notes division had done. So we have now only 10 to 12 days to prepare. So the only thing I could say about this that I will not have too much time to prepare. So I will be able to write only a couple of paragraphs. So are we interested in the proposition of this article or not?
I see at the top of the article it says 46 pages.
Yes, and there is also I will also drop the link to the article we have published already. So here we are. Sorry, I can't see it very well. The area journals. This is yeah, found it. Here it is. Here is an PDF about what we have published together with Eric, with Georgos from Eletra. We may write a bit something and about our last experience. But in this case, I will be in need of help. Because during this week and next week, probably I will not have more than up to 6 hours to write.
So the data systems article on Google Docs is in some way similar to the article that's been published. Is that right?
Yes, it's the same.
It's the same.
Yes,
Okay.
it's the same.
So what do we need to do with, or what has to happen to the Google Docs document?
With the Google Doc, we may just extend it because we were invited to publish freely the extended version of this paper. Okay.
And where would you publish it?
It will be published on iArea journals. I have cited the letter on the agenda, on the
Okay.
notes. So we have the exact letter, which is Dr. Dini sent to us.
But then, what about Eric and yours and the other?
Well, Eric left, left completely. So, but he will stay in the list of authors. So obviously, because actually he has written half of the paper. Eric and Georgios will stay because about the safety, the part is his.
Mhm.
Yeah, and we could add.
Elisabetta is also there.
Elisabetta is also there because it's about artwork. She had
Mhm.
written this. And we will leave everything as is and just add something, I guess. Probably it's the only strategy.
I think because we are working on something, although based on that previous work, is heading towards something else, or they headed the other way to say also because TCI decided to go other way. I don't think we have to rush now, but we can maybe think on producing something with no rush about like putting up this conversation, maybe sharing some bibliography about what is helping us to think this thinking we are developing with no rush. I think it's good to publish something just to have it in a written way, the outcome of all these meetings that we are having.
Yeah, but without a rush.
Without rush, and maybe just leaving behind, taking what we will continue, but leaving behind what was done, because already we did a closure about that.
Okay, that's a pretty good point. Francis?
Could we take one part of this paper that's related to what we've been discussing lately,
sure.
and just develop that one part in 4 to 6 pages, so it's small, which seems to be what was the instructions anyway. Maybe we could relate it to this idea of open and closed data systems and the challenge of sharing across different kinds of data uses, applications, and why this focus on metadata with the identifiers allows for more sovereignty and more access at the same time. Something like that.
Yeah, it could be a pretty good point. But Sergio, I think you are right. We should not rush now. We should.
I don't know if
Sorry.
you all use Zotero or some. We could make a Zotero library where we can share documents that are helping us think about these issues we're talking, and maybe with that, it's slowly work on a document that we can publish later on.
Yeah, because we have already created a channel on Mattermost DPID bibliography, so we have a bit of links.
Okay.
So we can,
It's a Zotero library, no?
No, it's not a Zotero library. We can create it, but would you like to create it for every one of us and publish the
no
link?
problem. Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay, I have to go, unfortunately, but I'll listen to the last couple of minutes if you talk longer, and I add my notes again afterwards.
Perfect.
And then we can still decide if you want to write some kind of reply together. I don't know if that is still on the to this RDA article, or we'll leave everything to the side now and just develop our thoughts.
Well, to me, we can agree on something on Mattermost.
Good. Let's do that.
We'll just start a thread, Francis.
I think Andre should draft a response to. I think it's a good working group, and so it's worth expressing our interest and expressing something of the point of view that we have. My guess is they would appreciate that.
Okay, so
Okay.
I may do.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah,
Right.
I may draft the document. Bye.
See you next time.
See you
Bye-bye.
next time. Thank you.
Bye.
I will have to leave at the top of the hour too. I'm sorry. Yeah. No.
So now probably we could jump to another point, and this is actually concept of realms, which is my actual proposition for the formal grammar of the persistent identifier we would like to establish. Don't you see it on the agenda? Yeah. So because
I saw.
yeah, because what we have experienced a lot is the two things, compatibility and prefixes, because this what really people want. So I may propose this kind of a formal grammar. I don't think I have an ability to demonstrate my screen. Could you please share it, Francis, or you, Sergio, to show the agenda? Thank you. So we have this kind of a formal grammar. So the realm here is actually a method, not a method, not that the set of rules that are used to resolve the given prefix and the given ID. And the list of realms, and so the list of rules is the only thing that should be accepted without reasoning by every node within the system. What do you think about this concept? Is it feasible or not for you?
I'm not that technical. I'm already shared it with Diego.
Yeah.
a friend from Argentina that's he's been working, and I was talking with him
Yeah.
about the working group. He doesn't feel so confident in his English, like language is a barrier for him. But for sure we will meet this week. And if any comment about this, I will share it in the document if you like.
Of course.
He was working with a local version of ARC, and he says something about resolvers and the structure. He referred that the protocol of OIE,
Yeah.
you know, that metadata protocol, that he aims to develop something like that for a persistent identifier. That's what he envisions, you know.
Yeah.
He was very enthusiastic about what we were talking, and I think for sure he will have something to say about this, and I will share and give credit, of course, to him.
Great. So then we could have a discussion about this formal grammar, right?
Yeah, I like it, but maybe something is escaping my knowledge. I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm a librarian.
Okay, I may add here that this schema, this formal grammar, is dedicated to, for example, the reverse compatibility, because the realm could also include, for example, a UI.
Okay.
And then it would be like in UniResolver, but much way easier. So if we have a metadata inside the system, we would just serve them. If we don't have them, then it would be an API request directly passed. It's like let's say a very simple example.
So sorry,
this is-
yes. What could you give me an example of a realm? What kind of entity that is?
For example, it could be a set of rules on which the DOI would be served by our system.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So a realm is a set of rules,
Yes.
not an entity that identifies an entity, but it's not the entity.
It's not an entity. I have wrote about this in the paragraph. So it's a non-abstraction.
Yeah.
It defines, let's say, it defines an entity only in the network. So it's let's say it's could be a piece of code, if we could think about it.
But would it be better to say that it defines a set of rules?
It determines the rules and operations which are allowed or disallowed to be performed over or by the given entity.
Okay. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I didn't read correctly. Thank you. No.
So I will just remove the misleading words. And then we have a definition.
Probably you need to write determines and defines in that order. Or yeah, maybe you're right. Or maybe you only need defines. You don't need determines.
Okay. Oh, okay. That's we can remove also this. Rules and operations which are allowed or disallowed to be performed over or by the given entity. Yeah. To me, that's enough. Sergio?
Yeah.
Okay. That's
by over or by an entity.
Yeah. Sorry, but this is because
no, it's okay. Yeah. That's better. Yeah, that's right. We don't need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And this is my proposal. It's now it's actually only a proposal about how it would be done. Let's say the dissemination and updating of the list of realms.
Right. So we could just some grammar things here. The full list of realms available in the network
So
is the only thing. Thing is not the right word. Is all. Sorry, let me just. I won't even
yeah,
suggest
just
all that every connected node should. Every connected node is required to know.
It's required to know.
And it is obliged. And what is remonstrance? What does that mean?
Let's say without any doubt, as a synonymic, but I don't know if I have used the proper word.
You don't need it.
Okay.
Because if you follow the rules, then it's going to be clear.
Okay. Okay, then this is
But
why
check that sentence. Does this sentence now make sense?
Yeah. This is why I'm always glad to ask for help from the native speaker.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Integrity of the list of rounds is the basis
network status
for
consensus.
the verifiability of the network status of the.
This consensus is let's say the synonymic for the term used in the blockchain community. So it's let's say the total integrity of the network as it is established, and that it means that everyone agrees to work within this network. Okay, now does it look does it look better to you?
Yeah, but this sentence is confusing. The node cannot formulate the list of realms.
It should be yes, it should be sent to so the node cannot create the list of realms. It should receive it.
This is similar to the badges in the DCI.
Yes. This is why
Okay.
I mentioned Git, because I was working a lot on the let's say the Git-like representation of the data in the decentralized network, and there is a project Git IPFS remote bridge written by me.
But
So
this but I understood realms is It's not like a badge. It's something you like like a context you give to the registry you're doing.
I
And
couldn't.
then the badge is something like it links. For example, I register a paper,
Yeah.
and as a realm, I put the ROR of my organization. So I give a context.
It's one of the cases, but the realm
But
is.
I just to illustrate the
Yes,
usage.
yes. I understand.
I put the metadata of the ROR of my the university or the ISSN of the journal.
Yeah, but it doesn't make sense when you are registering the PID for an article. In the article, it could be linked using the different PID. If it is ROR, because ROR.
But I don't have a PID. I'm creating a PID. My article does not have a
you are
PID.
creating the PID for your article.
Mhm.
But you are linking it to the PID, which let's say lives within the realm of ROR, right?
Or not, or the ISSN of the journal.
Yes, this could be a case. In the context of ISSN, it could be a case.
So the realm is the ISSN. So that ISSN will be the realm of many PIDs.
Yes. Yes.
But
So
then the ORCID of the author, it will be also realms. How many realms can be there?
or SID.
Yes.
Or SID.
Like for you have the ISSN of the journal, then the org IDs, the ORCIDs of the authors are also realms in the same person.
They are living in their own realms, let's say.
Okay, so it's just metadata.
Yes, it's a part of metadata.
But the realm is what I establish as a realm, it will be the ISSN on.
Yes. So let's think about it.
You establish one realm, like you establish only one metadata, one field as a realm. Or how many realms can be there?
It could be, let's say, as you have everyone taking the same list of realms, it could be as much as we can. But the list of realms is the only thing that we are, as let's say, the establishers of the system, should define and disseminate. This is how I am thinking about it.
Okay, so there you will give like a falling list of possible realms. Like,
yes.
Let's say ISSN or ORCID will be a realm if an author is publishing only his preprint.
Yes, it could be the realm, but this PID would then lead to an author, not an article.
Yeah. Okay. So and your and URL can be a realm, a blog, for example.
My what? Sorry.
URL, the address.
So it could be realm URL or URI. Then it could be just without a prefix and ID.
Okay, so that can be a realm.
Yes. Yes.
For example, a blog post.
Yes. Yes, it could be. And actually, it's a good point because I have partially borrowed this concept of realms when I was thinking about the prefixes in the context of DID. when in the DID, it is called method. In our case, it could be called realm, but it's let's say much wider than the definition of method in the DID, because DID is intended to be totally URI compatible, on which we are not limited to.
Okay. So
Okay.
the prefix will not be fixed. It will be constructed by the chosen realm.
Yes, and this is now I should explain why I propose to do this, because in the case of in the mean use case of PID, every author, for example, may have his own prefix. In our terms, the author is represented, let's say it's an internal representation of an author, it's an agent. And this is why now I should explain. So, do you have more or less an understanding about the proposition I have made about realms?
Yeah, I think I understand and I like it.
Perfect, Francis.
It's really difficult for me, but I try.
Yeah. So what about the initial dissemination? To me, as let's say I have experience with open source development, to me it seems the natural way to publish, literally publish the Git-like repository, and so everyone would take the list of realms and the dedicated code from this repository. But this repository should be placed not in the centralized network, or okay, from the beginning it would be placed on GitHub for sure, as it's more or less accessible for everyone. But in the future, it should be placed, for example, in IPFS or in IRO.
Yeah.
So it will have its own PID.
So why would you not build that directly in IPFS?
Because in IPFS we have a problem. IPFS is truly immutable. So the only one who could publish under the given key is an owner of this key. So it's a centralized model. In IRO, it's not like that. I will now explain why, but it should be developed another bridge for Git. And to be honest, I would be glad if I would have a time in these weeks to start developing it. Okay. Thank you, Francis, for rewriting this paragraph. It's really
just check it very carefully, because I don't understand what I'm doing. Yeah.
It's really very helpful. I will check it again and for the meaning. So the other entities which were intended to be discussed today are the agent and the message. Because what is an agent? Just to return to the past, I would say that I was investigating about generating the IRO compatible keys for authors. So for the agents, lateral agents, which are allowed to perform the operations about the documents in IRO network, from some kind of tokens. Let's say it could be lateral tokens, so everything. And yes, it is possible. As IRO uses DSA 25519, so it's an elliptical curve signature algorithm. It is possible to generate a key pair from actually anything. You have a string of characters, you will generate your key.
But that is for a registered author.
For let's say for an author that is willing to issue the PID.
So for the minting, it's a requirement for minting.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So the real is a context, but not necessarily the minting key. I mean, it's a prefix, but in the it will give context. Then the second part that you are saying is the the responsibility, mention of responsibility. We call it the agent. In librarianship, we call mention of responsibility.
Yes. So
is the field where that person responsible it creates this, but it will have a unique key for whatever is minting.
Yeah, this is a question right now, because, for example, any author, any organization would be willing to generate the key from, for example, Google account or CET token, some another web tokens. So we should think about two entities: the unique internal representation of an agent, and how it would be linked with all of these already established identifiers and tokens.
Okay, that is solved at the registry point. What for whatever, I mean, it's just that you make it like API that works with whatever other service you link to this
Yeah.
key that you're, but the question is, how scalable is this? How long is the code and how scalable is?
Well,
because if it's a universal identifier, then you should be able to represent millions of agents.
Yes, and this is for example, if you have an ORCID, here we should think about how the person representing an agent would have to, let's say, log in our network, because to me the let's say natural process will be, I have for example, I want to mint PID. I may generate the first private key by myself, load it into the network, and receive, let's say, the first hash point on it, which would be an internal representation. And this is my actual agent ID. So it's my persistent ID.
Here I have a question.
Yes.
This will be only humans persistent identifier.
No.
No.
No. The agent would be an organization.
So it could be a robot doing.
Let's say
you could register a robot.
Let's say so and so. This is why I am raising this question. What do you think about generating the internal representation of an agent entity and identity?
I think it solves the problem. The thing is how long is the code and the structure of that identification, so it could be scalable to a universal, I don't know, infinite, but the syntax I'm worried about.
To be honest, I am now thinking about the syntax is about the realm is an agent. The prefix could be, because it could be also without a prefix. The prefix could be, for example, ORCID.
Okay, but so our seed is the real in this case.
Well, this is a dilemma. This is a dilemma of ours.
So
Should we allow this ambiguity or not?
yes, I think
Okay.
you should be able to register like we say and whatever a set of prefix flexible. But the thing is that then you have a problem in resolving unique every time the correct resolving of the persistent identifier if the prefix is mutable.
Yeah. This
So how you separate each item? So you have a syntax that you have a mutable realm, the given agent that could be a person or a robot, and then the last part of the key that will give the unique identification. But you have to do it in a syntax that sorry, but that every time will resolve correctly, given that the middle part you have a fixed syntax, the last part has a fixed syntax, but the realm, the shoulder of the key is a mutable syntax.
Yeah, it's a problem. But in terms of let's say agent, it could be. I will may send an example to the chat.
I'm going to have to leave. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I apologize. Yeah.
Okay,
But this
okay.
is
No problem.
really,
So
really good.
see you
I
next
stayed too
time.
long. Yeah.
Just see you next time on 17th of September, right?
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks to you. Okay, so it could be looking like that.
You put it in the chat.
Yes.
Okay.
As agent is a realm, then we can, for example, take the identifier as ORCID and generate a token, generate a key, or regenerate a key during the person's login.
Okay.
Because once we have a definition of the realm, then the rules applied. Sorry?
But this will be replaced with the code that we will be given to the realm.
So you mean if you would write something like that?
Like, yeah, like for example, if like the shoulder of our identifier had to have a consistent syntax or not?
You mean something like that, as I wrote on the chat?
Yeah, or something completely different, because an ORCID has this syntax, and a ROR has a different syntax. An ISSN has a different syntax. It doesn't matter. What we have to do is to once they register that realm, then we can have a code for, okay, if it's an ORCID, it has this syntax for us.
Yeah.
And then we replace the ORCID to know that for us, this given, the thing is you have to, that's why I was asking about scalability.
Yes, I understand. So here we have the question that is we have different rules to use the particular, for example, ORCID to identify a person and to return a metadata, or if it is used to log in this person in our network, right?
Okay.
Yeah, this is a problem. About this about the scalability, I could say that let's say in the worst case, this is would be really a problem if we would register up to billions of agents.
Well, is it possible? Because if it's a universal persistent identifier, then we should be ready for that.
Yeah. So the scalability is about the searching, because for example, the single agent would be
And resolving, searching and resolving.
yes. So the single agent would be would have multiple let's say author ID generated from the different tokens.
Mhm.
So now the question is simplified. So should we start from the given ID for every agent, or should we allow the agent to log in our network from the different services? This is a question, because from this depends also the syntax. Because the first comment I sent in the first model, when we are using the unified internal representation of the agent ID, the first one is impossible.
I think you should not. I think if you limit it to linking with other services, you kind of lose governance on the persistent identifier.
So we can or we cannot.
I think if we avoid it, better.
Yeah.
But then we have to think. I like this realm concept.
Yeah.
The thing is how to make it, give it the syntax. Like if I'm thinking a journal,
Yeah.
the ISSN is a realm.
Yes.
And in the same way, like a collection in Zenodo, I will always refer to that linked data.
Yeah.
That's what's meant within that realm. So article after article in that journal will have the same realm. Let's say I publish as an individual.
Yeah.
Like a blog post.
Yeah.
Then my URL will be or my URI will be the realm.
Yes, one of the possibilities, right?
And then ORCID and DOIs can be treated as a URI as well, because they are
compatible.
Yes.
You mean about the consistency of the syntax in this?
Yeah.
Well, about this, I would say that it is already solved by the formal grammar, because the ID, as we are applying the given set of rules, then we have plenty of ways to resolve. And in a particular case, for example, for URI, we don't need even to search. We're just passing it. Just passing it through.
So yes, I think it should be keep simple.
Yeah, then it's then for
The simpler, the best.
yes. So let's say then I would think about how to allow, for example, if you are writing your or for example, just I will write on the chat PID agent, and it would be, for example, a DUI. Just let's imagine.
Mhm.
So the realm is agent, so DOI is a prefix, and the something like that.
Hola, sí. Sorry, I got a
No,
spam call.
absolutely no worries. So so this kind of PID would be used for the login, and this kind of PID would be used to return a metadata about some entity.
Okay.
Probably it would be the best way in one particular case, if you are already, if you have already the internal representation of yourself as an agent. This is what we should select. It's a to be honest, it's a technical question, so we need a data structure.
Yeah, this side we have to talk with Diego and see what he thinks.
Yes, and so I would be very glad to even to speak with him, as he's speaking Spanish, right?
Yes, you speak Spanish as well.
Yes, so I will try to involve Elizaveta,
Okay.
one of the co-authors, because she's fluent in Spanish.
Okay, and you speak Spanish as well, a little bit?
I can a little bit understand it because I well understand in Italian.
Okay.
So I can understand more or less Spanish.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
we can try setting a meeting. I will talk with him,
yeah,
and then we will set the meeting for the technical. Which week is better for you? This next week, coming week, or the other one?
the coming week, so the next week.
You mean the week? Let's
From
the calendar.
from 9th to 15th.
Okay. Okay. So I will speak with him and set up a meeting if you like.
Yeah, I will ask Elizaveta if it is feasible for her.
Okay, let's agree with that, and because that will help move forward, I think.
Yes, and as we have Mattermost, we can easily connect.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So
Let's
as we
close today because I have to go.
Yes, of course. So thank you very much for staying so long. I will publish the transcript and also the recording, as always. And see you not only on our meeting, but also on 17th of September.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andre. Bye-bye.
Bye. Ciao. Bye-bye.